Cool. So what I want to share with you guys is about the Enneagram. And I think it's particularly appropriate for this group because fundamentally the Enneagram is a system of spiritual development. Most of the time it's positioned as a personality test, right? And people take that and then they're like, oh, this is my type, I'm a whatever thing, and that means I'm just like this. Well, there exist personality tests like Myers-Briggs that you take and you test out, and that's what you are, and you're going to stay that for the rest of your life. Like, it's descriptive. The Enneagram really is saying which of 9 different flavors of journey your soul has selected for your return to the divine. And all of it is based around, in the incarnation, your soul chose to disconnect from one aspect of the divine, most, and in that disconnected, it makes a personality fixation, like a contraction, that then causes you problems because the human says, oh my God, I'm disconnected from the divine. I have to do it. And all the things that the human tries to do to recreate that experience fundamentally move you further from the divine. So the gift of the Enneagram is to say that pattern, whatever it is that I've been running, is fundamentally a description of what I am not. I am pure divine light, source energy. I am. And everything about the Enneagram pattern that I run is my distraction, but it also points exactly to what I can reconnect for my journey back to the divine. So it's way more than some personality test. Right? So there are 9 different types that represent 9 different flavors of disconnection, right? And we all contain all of them. Like we get to play all of them, but we usually have one that's our default mode. But there's also within the Enneagram this idea that nothing is ever static. When you look at the Enneagram circle, there's first of all the circle itself represents the law of one. Oneness, one source, one universe, we are all one, and so on. And then inside of that is the triangle, and the triangle represents the law of 3, which says fundamentally, in a world of duality, there's always a third option. We feel like it's black and white, but there's always something in between. And the people who test out on one of those 3 points are most likely to constantly be moving back and forth and be a little tough to tell where they're coming from, because they're always going, well, is it this or that? Oh, I'm all of it. The other lines in the Enneagram that kind of go do, right, is called the law of 7. And the law of 7 is that all things are always in motion. Nothing is ever done, complete, ended. It's always in motion in a dynamic expression. So those lines inside the Enneagram where the numbers are connected indicate, although we have kind of our home base, when we get stressed, we go along those lines and actually start acting out as a lower expression of a different type. Or when we really, really start to integrate, we move along those lines and we have access to the highest expression of additional types. So a lot of the study of the Enneagram is about how these movements fit together. And fundamentally, it's a tool of self-exploration. I have so many people that are like, well, I want to know if my son is a 5 or a 7, right? I want to know if my husband is a this or a that. And I admit that for me, it's been super useful as kind of a very high level social, how can I approach interacting with somebody, right? I can usually, within a few minutes, kind of get an idea of this person's one of 2 or 3 types. And it tells me like what I can talk to them about, what they're most interested in. Do they want me to ask about their kids, or do they probably want me to ask about their hobbies and where they've been recently? And so I use it that way, but it's not something that like, then I assume that they fit in that box all the time and they're always going to act like this and they should fix that about themselves so that they can, da 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 da. It really is much more about recognizing in ourselves, oh, this is the pattern that my psyche most often runs to actually distract me from source. And then when I start to see that pattern show up, oh gosh, I did that yesterday. Oh gosh, I just did that in the meeting I left. Oh gosh, I'm doing it now. Then we start to have access to making new choices. And one of my favorite questions is that your type or is that your truth? Right? Because I can look at something where the little voice in my head says something, and I'm like, yeah, but that's all the stuff that's not true. That's all the stuff that's distracting me further from source. When I recognize it's not true, like any shadow, you shine the light on it and it just goes away. And then what remains is something that's much more authentic. So that's kind of an overview of why I get so excited about this. Also, the fact that there's only 9 types. Right? This is a manageable number to be useful in real life. And it's coming from a lot of background information, ancient wisdom, like the diagram with the law of 7. If you take the number 1 and you divide it by 7, it actually is an infinite repeating number that is that diagram. 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7. 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7. Like it repeats infinitely and it follows that diagram. So I don't have to invent all the stuff behind it. There are all kinds of resources that I can pull on and direct people to. There are books about the Christian Enneagram, and there are books about the Kabbalistic Enneagram, and there are books about non-dual Enneagram. So there's a lot of richness behind it that just adds to it and makes it more accessible to more people. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I have this really, really exciting diagram. It's like I used this in my my meetup, but it's not, it's not that fancy. Can we make you guys big again over on the other screen? All right. Can you see it? Okay, cool. So the idea is that if we start with the core of being, source, oneness, so on, and you think of it as having like a diamond with 9 facets, right? When we disconnect from whatever facet, that's as we incarnate, that's what kind of sets the type in motion. So is it nature? Is it nurture? Big question. My belief is it's a soul choice. And it's a setup because what will happen is that baby will come into an environment And, on little tiny baby level, something might happen like mom is angry at whatever and sets baby down. It has nothing to do with baby, right? But mom just sets baby down. Well, a child that has come in ready to be a type 8 will start to build in, the hell is wrong with mom, right? A child that's come in ready to build a type 1 will go, wow, I wonder what's wrong with me that mom doesn't want me. So that same event gets interpreted in a way that actually starts to reinforce and build the type. So the suffering that gets created by that is called the passion of the type. So the passions that are in the descriptions tend to be a little bit old-fashioned words. So sometimes it takes a little bit of interpretation to make sense of them for now. So I'm just going to use my type as an example going through this, and then we'll have plenty of time for you guys to ask about how yours works as well. So I run mostly a type 5. I no longer say I am a type 5 because that's false. Right? So I run mostly type 5 energy, and the fundamental thing behind a type 5 is there's not enough to go around, right? Specifically, there's not enough of me to go around. And that can get created either by a parent who's unavailable, and so the child is neglected, so there's not enough parent attention, or a parent who's really intrusive, like in your face all the time, wanting to play with the baby, wanting to carry the baby, and the baby's like, oh, I need a break, right? It's too intrusive. There's not enough of me to keep mom happy. So my example of that is actually from when I was a little bit older. Food has never been a big hobby of mine. And I grew up drinking milk. I could have my glass of milk and not need any other food. Well, my mom followed Dr. Spock. And according to Dr. Spock, children need to eat. And if your children does not eat, it will die. So my mother did not want me to die. So she would hold my nose until my mouth opened and then put food in. I'm going to claim this was a little bit intrusive to the child, right? Totally coming from love, right? You guys haven't had a chance to meet my mom, but everybody loves my mom. I love my mom. She was doing the best she could. So with this sense of there's an intrusive world and there's not enough of me to take care of all of it, the type 5 goes into, I better hold on to all of me that I can, right? I don't want to overschedule myself because I might run out of energy, right? Those networking things, I can only schedule one of those a day. Or, gosh, I don't want to invest in taking that vacation because it would take so much of my energy to replace the money. Or, whatever it might be, there's not going to be enough, so I'll hoard what I have. And fundamentally, it comes out in thought space because I'm a mind-based person in this model. I'm just a mind-based person. I'm going to own that one. So I have to get all the knowledge. I have to hoard all the knowledge. Like, I can't possibly forget anything. And I need to know all the details about the things because it's up to me to figure out how all the things fit together. So there's this sense of, a lot of times type 5s are known for, I just need to research one more thing. Right? Analysis paralysis is the thing for type 5s. And if they're really, really unhealthy, they will start withholding information, like in business meetings and so on, to make themselves important so they get attention because there wasn't enough growing up. So they will start to use information hoarding as their way to make things work. So the passion is around, they call it avarice. Like there's not enough. I've got to keep all of it. I don't dare leak anything. And then the coping to gather, especially information, and hold on to it is called retention. Right? So very much a retention kind of a style. Because if I could just hold on to enough, then there would be enough energy. Now, the truth is, of course, we are all elements of source. Source is infinite energy. Energy already is, and there's no need for me to hold it. But if I'm coming from this disconnection with source, it appears that I need to hold the energy. And you know what happens? The tighter I hold on to that knowledge, and the more that I try to grow it, and the more that I try to keep more pieces together, the further I am from relaxing into source. So specifically, the mechanism reinforces itself and makes it so I can't possibly get back. The defense mechanism for a type 5 is isolation. Like, oh, going to all those meetings really depletes me, so I'll stay home half the time. I really want to be able to work on my book, so I need to just stay home and isolate. In fact, maybe I'll go away for a writer's weekend. In fact, maybe I'll move to a mountain property that's an hour from the grocery store. Right? And I'm like, oh my God, I isolated to the point where I destroyed my life. Let's not do that anymore. So at some point, people get tired of their own story, right? They get tired of the fixation. They get tired of rerunning the same pattern. And they start to go, there's got to be a different way. And in the Enneagram, what happens is they learn about their type and they start to notice when the pattern is running itself. Self-observation shines the light on the shadow. And once you do that, it allows it to start to unwind. And they start to integrate. Body, mind, and gut are the three centers. And then the programming starts to peel off, and the contracted opinions and all the places where they've come to conclusions and so on start to peel off. And then the patterns of behavior start to release. And they call that phase type deconstruction, which is the most crazy ass experience you've ever had of no longer being anybody you recognize. Nothing makes sense. You're literally out of your head, or you're out of your pattern of everything that you've taken yourself to be, because you used to think that this fixation and the defense mechanism were who you were, right? I'm the kind of person who. And so as those things fall away, it's not who you are anymore. And so as I started to study this, when I was living up on the mountain, I would be like sitting at the computer working on something, and then I would find myself walking through the kitchen. I'm like, the hell? Why am I in the kitchen? I'm supposed to be working on something. And I would move myself back to the computer and sit down and get back at it. And it might be 20 minutes later, and I'm walking through the kitchen and going into the living room. Like, what the hell? Like there's literally so little egoic function that it flips in and out. And people often think they're like going crazy. It's pretty important to have support during that time. My story about it is that for all the issues that created my type that were around food, my body was moving me back into the food room to realize, like, there's enough food here. You can have it when you want it, and you don't have to have it when you want it. So that's my story about what was going on with that. But eventually, enough of it peels away that what's an authentic expression starts to come up and say, oh, you know what? I've moved so far off into isolation land. I really am ready for some community, or I really am ready to, take the next level or express in a new way. For type 5s, it often comes through as generosity, wanting to teach. So teaching and coaching were like perfect evolutions for me. And then for me, coming down off the mountain and into Fresno and going, oh, this is not community, right? It was my recognition that I needed to leave that area. Like, I'm done here. It's complete. I need to go. So what happens is there's this holy idea that is the reflection of source that draws your type back toward wholeness. Right? So this holy idea for a type 5 is holy omniscience or holy transparency. So knowing that the truth is there's only one oneness, and all of us appearing as distinct separate individuals really are still expressing that oneness. We seem to have the skin boundary, but it's really transparent when you start to experience each other as also being expressions of oneness. It happens also in studying different areas of information, fields of thought. Like, oh, suddenly I can see where they call that cultural anthropology, and they call that psychology, and they call that spirituality, but it's kind of like all the same. With the boundaries get a little shaky. It's transparent when I go from, here's the key for a type 5, knowledge, collecting and hoarding knowledge, to being in a state of knowing and just resting as source, as oneness, in the knowing as it's called forth. So the ordinary mind gets transmuted by really contemplating the holy idea, and then the virtue of the heart can show through again, which for type 5 is technically non-attachment, but it's much clearer as generosity, right? There's more than enough. There's always the ability to give and be replenished from an endless source. So there's no reason for me to be attached or hoard anything. So that's when the heart virtue can show up as a natural consequence of the changing of the mental patterns. It doesn't do any good to go out and try to be generous when my actual internal experience is still, I'm going to be depleted. I'm going to run out. You can't try to do the virtue. You can contemplate the holy idea. Okay, the truth is, I'm not separate. The truth is, I'm everything that Source is. The truth is, Source is constantly regenerating as me. I can contemplate those, and it'll shift me so that the virtue simply expresses. So that's kind of the basic journey of how an Enneagram type comes into being and then is in itself the journey back to source. Yay! So, yeah,
bravo, holy cow.
Yeah. So I thought that it would be fun if you guys want to walk through for your different types how these things show up and fit together. What are some of the common ways that the patterns express and can be integrated or can be dysfunctional? And so I'm just going to open it up if anybody wants to take a look. All right, Carrie, you just took the test.
Well, yeah. So I took somebody else, like another test, and it said I was a 2, and I'm not a 2. or maybe I was presenting in that moment as a 2, but I took this test, which I didn't love, by the way, probably because my type is like, I don't like these pictures. These aren't the right ones. I can't, they're all lame, right? That's where I was. But you're right. It was super accurate in terms of what I'm running. So it has me as a 7-3-1, and I resonate with all of those. Karen's laughing at me. You see, so my question is, so I get this. I get all of this. I want to argue with it, probably because I live there. But my question is about my virtue of the heart. So actually I have 2 questions on so it says my virtue of the heart is sobriety. That totally resonates with me. I mean, it resonates like in terms of like, I don't drink but I also don't know what the better word for that is.
So when it's dysfunctional, the type 7 basically is a status of, I am terrified to feel my feelings, so I want to be any place but here now. I'm going to think about the future. I'm going to plan a new trip. I'm going to set up something else that's going to come to fruition. I'm going to do my strategizing. I'm going to go out and try all the things. I probably have a bazillion hobbies and projects going, and I may or may not ever finish any of them, because as soon as I start, then something else looks like more fun, because it's got to be more fun over there than it is here. Right? And so as a 7 starts to recognize, like, all the things are fun and it is safe and developmental to stop and be with what's here now, even if it's dark, even if it's a shadow. From here, when I become more whole and balanced, I can realize that the holy work for me to do is on this path, and I can give myself to it without the flightiness. That's sobriety.
Got it. So I'm writing be here now, wholeness. Okay. Yeah. So then my other question is on the defense mechanism. I feel silly because I don't understand the word. I mean, I understand what it is, but I understand the word externalization. I'm having trouble identifying.
Of course.
because I'm externalizing.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question?
Yeah.
Carrie, where are you getting the virtue of the heart, the mechanism, and all that?
Karen posted this in the group.
I actually have it. It's the other page there. We can put those up. And I have it here too. I cheat. I don't have all these memorized. So
is that blame? What is that?
It's not my fault.
Oh, for sure it's not. Okay, cool.
Right? So as soon as something happens, it's not my fault, or it's okay that I told that little white lie that time because.
Justifying, okay.
Reframing is the thing that comes up a whole lot.
Okay.
Well, of course I did that or it was really okay for me to do it that time because.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. I find that in the last 6 months, 4 of my 5 clients who came in were type 7s. So
I mean, here's the thing. When you're talking about this and you're like, it's not like, I'm hearing everything that you're saying and I'm intellectually agreeing with you. And I'm totally attached to like, I'm a type 7, which I think we all do in any personality test. It's like, I got the best type, right? Like mine is the best.
Say that. Like ones are not so happy.
Oh, well, I'm a 1. That's my 3rd thing, but I think 1's pretty rad too. But that's because 7s are optimists, I guess. But so I'm having like trouble, and I'll stop talking after this. I'm having trouble. So intellectually, I'm like, okay, I get it. This is like my chosen path. And it's also the thing that separates me from the wholeness of who I am. But I'm like, how could that? Like, you hear what I'm saying? Like, I'm wanting to argue that. Like, if what I am is so freaking awesome, how is it separating me from the wholeness of who I am?
When a 7 integrates their journey, they are so freaking awesome, and it's 100% applied in doing the holy work that is theirs to do. It's not frittered away on all the funsy smorgasbord things. They're still optimistic. They are totally filled with joy, and they bring all of that upward energy into the work.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, it only gets better.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
So if we want to talk about ones,
yeah.
152, in fact.
Okay. So the type 1 loses connection with everything in the universe is perfect in its wholeness, exactly as it's expressing right now. It's unfolding as it should. And losing that, the type 1 starts to go, shit, that's wrong. I better make it right. That's not right. I've got to do this. I've got to take care of this. I have to make that right. Oh, that person, did you see what they did? They did this thing and they didn't do it right. And so they develop this amazing gut sense of what is right. And it usually somebody who's going to travel that path will come into a very conservative community, a very structured community that will tell you what's right and that it's important to do what's right. Right. And so
And you will be perfect. You will be perfect ultimately.
And if you are not perfect, they will tell you. The criticism is endless. The only thing that's more than the criticism that a 1 will give to their surroundings is their inner critic. It's freaking nonstop, ceaseless, relentless inner criticism all the time. So here they are wanting so much to be perfect, to be the good girl, the inner good girl, to be the good boy, to get it right. And that inner critic never, ever stops. It's like, to me, that would be like one of the worst places to have to live. And yet, when the recognition comes, that inner critic isn't always correct. Oh, that's not necessarily the right way. Maybe there isn't a right way. Maybe it's also okay to have a little bit more joy. So the 1 has a line over to 7. So what's really going to be helpful is to bring in some of that optimism and having the fun and the playfulness, just to prove to the inner critic, look, we made a mistake and we still survived. Nobody died. In fact, nobody even criticized us. In fact, it was kind of fun. And so the type 1 is running all of this judgment, basically, and it seeps into this anger and resentment. Well, clearly these are the rules. Why is nobody else following the rules? Often to a type 1, as far as they can tell, they are the only one who even knows what the rules are. Well, the thing is, usually when you start to dig in, those rules only exist in their own head. Those really aren't everybody's rules. And so when that starts to come apart, what gets revealed is this sense of, oh, it's perfect. that some people want to protect the climate and other people want to work with the homeless population. It's perfect that some people are this way and other people are that way. We have artists and we have accountants. This is a good thing. And as that gets more and more embodied in the perfection is, and not all of these differences are mistakes, then there's this sense of serenity of, I can relax. I don't have to make it perfect. It's not my job. God's got this. And so in that sense of serenity, then there's an ability to contribute in a recognition that all that I do is part of the holy perfection. Does that help?
Yeah. So, you know, I've grown I've grown past a lot of that, but I was just thinking on the way home from Elise's, I was thinking that about my fellow drivers though. Like, it was very pleasant driving today because like everybody was pretty much following the rules. I literally had that thought.
I know. and that's why some of those rules exist, right? There really are shared laws that everybody's supposed to follow to make life easier for everybody. There are also things that are only obvious to type 1s.
Like all the spelling and grammar stuff. Yeah.
Right. Well, again, you know, grammar is a real thing. And if we would all spell words in an agreeable way, it would help. But it'll come up in things like, if we're having a business meeting, are people supposed to speak up, or are they supposed to wait and go around the table? And interestingly enough, a lot of type 1s in corporate, because corporate's a very structured environment that makes type 1s feel very comfortable, but they have one opinion or the other. And they get really angry when other people in the meeting don't get it. So one of my favorite distinctions is the type 8 knows what's true. Right? So they just know what is truth, and how could you not know that? And that makes sense because their holy idea is oneness. The truth is, it's all one. Truth is truth. Well, the type 8 human says, I have to go find the truth. And if anybody is doing injustice, I have to protect the truth. I have to make sure everybody's okay. And I'm going to seek vengeance for any injustice. And I'm going to protect the unprotected. And they come across a lot of times as a steamroller because they know what's true, which is slightly different. And this to me gets at the distinctions of the Enneagram from the type 1 who knows what's right. Right? So what's true is more associated with wholeness, oneness, one truth. And what's right is more associated with how do we live in community? And when you look at the diagram, the type 8 is on the side of the circle with all the head types. And the type 1 is on the side of the circle with all the heart types. How do we live in community? So there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So Karen, can you say more about 8s? My on this profile, my pattern was 871.
Okay. So as an 8 chooses to, or as a soul chooses to incarnate along the 8 path, that aspect of there is one truth gets lost. So 8s are highly sensitized to people who think they have their own truth. Like this whole fake news thing drives 8s bazonkers, because how can there be multiple truths? And because they're across the top of the circle, they're fundamentally a body gut reaction type. Like, I know in my gut what the truth is. And now that I have to enforce this from the human perspective, I'm going to do it with gusto. I want all of it. And so they have this sense of power and forcefulness in going about the things that they believe in, or as they get less and less on the healthy levels, simply the things that they want, they will go and take, because of course they're entitled to that. Obviously, that's not anybody in this group, but that sense of gusto, I think, is a lot of what the type 8 brings. And what happens is, as in my heart, I have to make these things happen, then the fixation in the mind becomes, it's okay for me to go and take that away from them because they're the bad guys. A lot of we, they comes from this. And in unhealthy situations, it goes into full objectification, right? Well, of course it's okay to put migrant children into a concentration camp. They're just objects. They don't count. And that kind of a thing, I mean, that's really, really extreme, but it can show up even in like business meetings. When you have a salesperson who's going to make that sale, like used car salesman, usually wouldn't be an 8, but an 8 would go about it as, it's okay for me to overcharge you for that because it's how I get what I want. And you're just a buyer, right? So you're an object, you're a number in their spreadsheet, you're a thing. And by doing that objectification is how they justify pursuing what they see as the truth, right? Like, this is the truth. This is what needs to happen. Every man for himself. I'm here to make sure my family has everything they need for the apocalypse. And everything for my family entitles me to do whatever it takes to those others, right? So that that essential splitting, right? The separation. Their holy truth is there's only one. The fixation in their mind causes them to divide it up into us and them, which is going to take them further and further from their truth. So as an 8 starts to realize, oh wait, that's not true. Oh, and their defense mechanism that reinforces that objectification is total denial, total blind spot that they are having any impact on those others. Like I did what? That bothered you? How did you even know? Like they truly, in an unhealthy situation, don't even see it. So their growth path is to start to open up and recognize the experience of, first of all, recognize there are others. It's not just you on the planet, and that those others have an experience, and that experience is valid. 8s have an enormous heart, right? They just, to the degree that they have gusto and forcefulness against, when they open up that enormous heart, they're so just magnanimous. They envelop and protect and care for with this huge, huge heart, and allow themselves to be seen as very vulnerable and innocent. They're allowed to appear weak, right? Their fundamental belief that keeps them stuck is, if I even appear weak, people will take advantage of me. Everybody's out to get me, all those others. So I can never appear weak. I can never show my vulnerability. And I will show up into any room armored, right? The invulnerable strength will come through. Bryn, are you okay?
Oh, I'm so cracking up with the angry 8 in chief. Wowza.
Yeah. So when it unwinds for them and the sweetness of their innocence comes through, and they open up their heart to really embrace these others, and they still bring their full power to the table, right? A lot of the warm social activists, not the angry social activists, but the warm social activists that are making a difference. They're using their power to actually help the downtrodden and so on. That's where the 8s can show at their best. Does that help, Deborah? Yeah, she's on her.
Wait, sorry, I was muted. It does. And Karen, I've understood the desire for the thing called lust to be a desire for intensity. So I've read a little bit about that. But could you say more about the virtue of innocence?
It's an undefendedness. It's the dropping of masks and armor and preconceived ideas, and a willingness to simply be there and be present, even if attacks may come, but not necessarily to expect it, right? So in the fixation, there's this sense of, if I appear weak, they will attack me. In the innocence, there's both a personal, I don't deserve to be attacked, and I assume others are innocent. They're not out to get me.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question about 8s, please.
Yes.
8s fascinate me because when I was an 18-year-old, I spent a year in Denmark living with someone who was a bipolar angry 8. And so my understanding of 8s has always been that, the unhealthy side. I would love to know just a tiny bit more about 8s moving into their power. Like, I understand what you're saying. Their sweetness, their innocence, and their vulnerability. How do healthy 8s like to hold power? Like, what is it?
They're going to be very confident leaders with a lot of honor, but they carry it in a relaxed way, right? There's a can-do. They're active. There's a can-do aspect of it. They're tenacious. They're very resourceful, but they're using their strength for a wider good, right? It's not just for themselves. And in the process, they can, there's a level of surrender of, I'm willing to put myself out there even if attack might happen, and I'm not going to fight back, right? They're gentle. They can be very inspiring.
Huh.
Yeah.
Do you think Obama might have been a good 8? Might be I see that.
I could see him as an 8. I can also see him as a really, really healthy 7. The optimist. There is hope.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Is it anybody you're going to ask about 2s or 9s?
I have to say, I struggle with these tests because I feel like I get so tired of it. It's like I give up. I'm like halfway between. I was like, oh my God. And then I didn't feel like I really identified with some of them. I was like, I don't know which one to pick. So I just kind of picked whatever. And now I'm guessing myself. So I got 973. Would you have guessed that for me?
It doesn't surprise me.
Okay.
So yeah, the type 9 is the ones that tend to forget themselves in making sure that everybody else is getting along. So there's an element of you matter and you matter and you matter. So what can I do to make sure all of you get what you need? And in an unhealthy place, there's a complete loss of, and I matter,
Mm-hmm.
right? Trying to get 2 9s to go out to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, where do you want to go? I don't know, where do you want to go? I don't know, where do you want to go?
I've gotten better with that.
Right?
Like, oh my God, just make a freaking decision. Here, let's go
Right.
here.
And it gets to the point where if somebody really pushes me around what is it that I want, what is it that I want, I will literally leave my body. It's not safe to know what I want. Because if I know what I want, my needs might have been too much when I was
Mm-hmm.
an infant.
Mm-hmm.
And if I expressed my need, I might have had a narcissistic parent that
Mm-hmm.
came back in anger or whatever. So it's not safe to have needs or wants. It's not safe for me to know. So if I really get into a situation where somebody expects me to know, I'll start to get foggy. I'll start to get sleepy. I'll start to tell stories that have a whole bunch of details that go off into the weeds, like for miles. Anything but being direct and on point.
Yeah.
So that level of disengagement all the way down to I'm not allowed to know what I want. They call it sloth, but it's not sloth in the sense of laziness. It's not like being lazy, but it's this sleepiness.
It's like the unsafe space of deserving, I guess. It's like
Yep.
It's not safe to deserve or to have desires or to express those desires.
Right. If I can't express them, I better not even have them. And rather than knowing myself, I'll go off into a daydream.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not only that I don't want you to know, I hide it from me. And what that means is I can't take any action on behalf of getting what I want. I can't take any action.
So it's like sloth is a blob.
Sleepiness. The defense mechanism is often called narcotization, putting themselves to sleep, falling asleep to their own needs. And literally, I can often tell when I'm talking with somebody and they're a 9, like at these networking meetings, and they've got a lot of healers and massage therapists and yoga teachers tend to be 9s. And I can't follow what they're saying. I'm like, I'm getting sleepy. She's yawning. Just like that. So the thing is with type 9s, the holy idea is holy love. The 8 says, yes, everything is one. There's only one. It's all one. And the 9 says, and that is love. It's all love. No matter what you need, no matter what you want, no matter how you're going to get there, no matter what you see, it's still love. And given that everything is love, founded in love, expression of love, it's safe for me to take action. It's okay for me to know what I want and to go for it. And so from that sense of, at first, right, just coming into healthiness, knowing what I want and taking action for me. But then it starts to grow as knowing what my family needs, knowing what my tribe needs. And when you look at a lot of social activists, right, they're really coming from, okay, it's safe to know what the Black community needs now. What does the people of color community want? And how can I take action toward that, given that I am an excellent mediator? I am able to really have empathy for every person at the table. I can really see where the common ground is, feel it in my body, bring it out in everyone else so that we can take mutual action. That's what happens when the 9 really starts to own it, the best of them, and let go of the not safe to know what we want. It is safe. In fact, what we want is love. And so that's an avenue to be able to move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I have a question.
So 9s and 2s are often confused in that they tend to give themselves away. The 9s are coming from not knowing in their body what they want. It's not safe to have wants. The 2s are coming from their heart of, I will earn your love by always giving you what you want. I will become indispensable. I will know what you want before you even know what you want. In fact, I will know what you want better than you know what you want, and I will always give it to you. Right? So there's this, that's where they get the pride as the word they use for the fixation. I know what you need more than you do. Well, that's the pride piece. And where they're coming from is a sense from the universal perspective of the universe is unfolding according to plan. There is a holy will, all is going well, and the ultimate freedom within that is to know which piece of it is yours to do and be ultimately free to do your piece. Right? And so when you lose connection with that, you get into this situation where something needs to be done here to make you happy. Clearly, you don't know what it is. I know what it is. I know what's going to make you happy. And now, right? So that's the pride piece. And then the fixation is, I have to make you happy. I will do things for you. I will tell you wonderful things. I will make you feel so important because you are so important. And all the attention is over there. There's no attention here. I'm not important. Right? And underneath, it's this sense of, I'm giving you the attention so that you'll love me. I'm doing these things so that you'll approve of me. And if I keep giving and giving and giving and nothing comes back, I'm going to start to get a little pissed. So that's where they get into this resentment and forming a reaction, right? I gave you all that stuff and you didn't even buy me lunch. Right? I just gave you an hour of free coaching and you didn't buy my tea. So underneath, there's this real subtle way where it's a giving to get. And when they start to realize that and go, you know, you're already going to get all your needs met because the universe is unfolding as it should. I don't have to do that. Then what comes out of it, I don't have to take care of you and do it for you. I don't even have to know better than you. So I can be a little bit more humble. And I only am responsible for me. And then the type 2 can go, okay, while I'm being responsible for me, I can be lovable, loving, and joyful and radiant because in this holy freedom, all my needs are met. And I know it. I am unfolding as I should. And from that, I can give love from the overflow.